Okay, so welcome to the Deliberate Dad podcast, the podcast that helps you live more deliberately so you can show up for everything and everyone that matters to you. So I'm delighted today to have my good friend, Carey here. How are you, Craig?
Good, thanks. And yeah, really excited about this, Steve. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, so me and Craig started our coaching journey together. So Craig is a life and business coach with a background in health and fitness. And we actually did our training together. So it must have been nearly 4 years ago it started, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, long old time ago. That was when Jess was pregnant with Pearl. So yes, it was definitely 4 years ago. So migrated into that and his most important job, dad to Ophelia.
Yeah, something that's a big change for both of us since we started that course.
Yeah. The good old days of not having to get up. Actually, you did get up at 6 a.m. being a personal trainer, to be fair. But the days of me not having to get up at 6 a.m. Life has dramatically changed in the 4 years that we first met on that Zoom call, right?
Certainly has.
But definitely all for the better, Craig. So what I like to do to begin with is the podcast is called The Deliberate Dad, is to get your version of what a deliberate dad is, right? So we all have our own preconceived ideas of what success is, right? Of what being deliberate is, of what a fulfilling life or hitting our potential is. So what is yours? Like what is life? Sorry, what is living deliberately for you and being a deliberate dad?
Wow, I mean, it's a big question, and obviously, different, like you said, for different people. I think for me, and kind of if you think about the word deliberate, for me, it's that kind of that level of consciousness around how I'm living and what I'm doing and trying to kind of operate from a conscious level and a level of intent. And it's funny, obviously, being a coach like yourself, and you mentioned, my background in health and fitness and running a personal training business for 20 years. I think I've always had that to a degree. I've obviously taken care of my health as a main priority. So I think even that kind of, that made me operate on a kind of a certain level conscious wise. The coaching has added to that. And I feel, I don't know if you could echo this, but I actually feel really privileged to have actually kind of taken that journey just before I became a dad, because I definitely feel it's equipped me with tools that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think, the things I've learned through coaching, through the work that I've done since qualifying, and constantly learning from other people, that's kind of always elevating me anyway. But I think for me personally, it's like I said, taking care of my health is a big thing. I really see the value in taking care of me to make sure that I can be that version of the dad that I want to be. And I know you talk about that a lot as well. That kind of being selfish in a positive way, and that's something that I feel very strongly about as well. I think I'm always talking to my clients, and always did when I was working as a personal trainer, about making sure that you are putting yourself first in some ways, because if you fall apart, everything falls apart. And that's not just physical health, that's mental health as well. And for me, I feel an immense sense of pride, but also pressure, like a good pressure, to show, not just show up for my daughter, but to show my daughter, like, that kind of be that model person in a way, because certainly in these early years, me and my wife Yulia, we are the main people that she's looking at to go, okay, what is it to be a human being? What is it to operate in this world? So, I think if I'm looking after myself, keeping myself fit and healthy and mentally sound, and then, just really trying to show up for her, be mindful of how I'm operating as a dad. And a big thing for me is reflection, because I do get it wrong. And when I get it wrong, I think about it. I have conversations. She's only 2. but we have conversations. I apologize, and I think those things are having a really good impact on her. So yeah, enjoying the journey so far.
Yeah, amazing. And like, it's interesting that lens you just talked about. Obviously, as you said, I talk this idea about being deliberately selfish all the time, like putting yourself first so you can show up for, yes, yourself, totally, but for everything and everyone that matters. But I really liked your lens of what Ophelia is actually looking at, right? So that you are the physical demonstration of what is a man, a dad in her world. And that saying, the cliches are all true when it comes to parenting, isn't it? It's like they do what you do, not what you say. So I know Pearl running up and down here wants to be strong. She sees me swinging a kettlebell out the back, like she sees Jess going to the gym or going for a run. It like all that sort of is getting embedded into her that's what humans do, right? Look after themselves. Whereas, as you said, like if you go the other way, then they don't get that case study almost in front of them, right?
Yeah, I think having an awareness around that, that they're watching all the time, they're learning, and again, it's not about. I mean, I don't think there is any perfect. I don't mean me and my wife have this conversation all the time about talking about things that we do and things that we say to her, and obviously we now live in this time where we've got social media which is full of advice and people telling us how we should parent. um but I think just having that awareness of the fact that they're watching, and just being a bit more mindful of what you're modeling, I think is a very good start to being a deliberate dad.
Yeah, yeah. And like with the social stuff is it's hard to not get pulled into that comparison trap. Like, and also like who you're taking your advice off, right? So
Yeah.
the influencers in parenting and health in whatever field you choose to pick aren't necessarily the ones with the most qualifications, right? That have the most followers. Like, there's a few times my wife sent me some stuff on parenting, and I'm like, who the fuck is this person? Just because they've got like 75,000 Instagram followers doesn't mean to say that I should follow them because they've been able to like hack an algorithm. Your point there about lifting your awareness, and I suppose the word I would use, right, deliberate, but being deliberate with the choices that you're making, actually consciously deciding yourself, right? Like making a decision, not just outsourcing your own views and opinions to a person on Instagram with the most following.
Yeah, definitely. And it's easy, like you said, it's easy to kind of fall into that trap. And I think interestingly, like kind of an observation of myself in a way is I think I used to fall prey to that far more often in the past. And maybe the kind of the coaching journey has helped me with that, because I think I was more likely to kind of read something and be sucked in by it. And if I was reading it, I would read it like it was truth, and it would impact me. It would impact what I thought was right. But I feel that that isn't the case now. I'm much more selective. Maybe that's just becoming an older man as well. But I don't want to use the word cynical, but I mean, I don't. I certainly evaluate things differently. Sometimes you'll be on social media and something will hit. Something will be like, yeah, that resonates with me. I think I feel the same as that. Or it challenges something that you do think, and that can be really helpful as well. But I mean, I guess the way social media has gone is it's probably forced people to not just kind of buy into everything, because you can't buy into everything because there's so much conflicting information out there.
Yeah, totally. It's like confusing. I think it's a combination of us both becoming old men, not having any time. I was chatting to my dad earlier and he was talking about the football last night. And I was like, I have no time for cultural significance in the last 6 months. I have no idea what the hell's going on because I've just no time to do it. But yeah, no, you're totally right. And like one of the things that I've done as well is, and I've created this little masterclass for my clients is this idea of becoming deliberately ignorant, right? Like I think when we're younger, especially, and it's a human evolutionary condition, right, to want to fit in the pack. So therefore, demonstrating some kind of knowledge. Or I used to love being good at pub quizzes and having all these like random facts about NFL seasons in fucking 1978. But actually, you only have limited amount of time and energy and attention to absorb these facts and information. So like what you put your attention on is ultimately like what your life is. So being really choosy on where you absorb the information, and it's okay to actually not know about everything. Yes, of course you want to be slightly informed, right? Totally. But I'm way more comfortable knowing less than I was, 10, 15 years ago. Not going to win me any pub quizzes, Craig, but apart from that, like, it's been a positive sign for me.
I mean, I think as well, you kind of speak into a bigger thing there in a way, within the kind of the realms of being a deliberate dad is letting certain things go, letting some things go to give you more focus, to be able to be more deliberate. If you're trying to be everything, there's probably not much you're gonna be optimal at. And in the modern world where there are so many things to do, so many things to think about, we've all got so many different responsibilities. If we don't follow some kind of mindfulness act, then our heads are probably just a big, jumble. So I think, actually that's something that I've done a lot. It's something that I work with my clients a lot. That take some things off the table. We're very good at going, well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna bring this in. I'm gonna do more of that. And we just think that we've got this, bottomless capacity to just bring new stuff in all the time without actually mindfully also going, well, I'm gonna bring this in, but I'm gonna bring that out. Actually, I'm not going to focus on that. And some of it is, real things, and some of it is kind of, the way we operate, the way we think. Like you were saying there about, that need to be right. That's definitely something I've really worked on. Letting that go, the need to win an argument, all those sorts of things. If you can let those things go a little bit, I think that gives you more space to be more deliberate in more meaningful ways, and more aligned to your real values and what's important.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think one of the things that I'd really learned from the coaching experience and, being coached all these years as well is it doesn't feel like it, but everything is a choice. It is your choice of how you choose to action the initial reaction that you have. So it's not necessarily your choice, the initial thought that pops into your head. It's definitely not your choice, right? Someone cuts up in front of you when you're driving, you're going to have a pretty shitty thought. But it's your choice to decide what to do with that. And I think like that level of awareness has only come to me in the last few years. And I think like not necessarily believing everything that I think was a weird sort of concept for me for a little while, and it had to sort of hit me at the right time for me to fully sort of absorb it. But now, I know that I have so much more control then over my existence and experience because I understand that. It's that whole not going with your first default thought, but actually choosing to act in a slightly different way, more deliberately.
Definitely. And it's funny because I've definitely had, difficult conversations with people sometimes when you address that topic. And, people will often kind of say, well, I don't have a choice in that. But if you break, like you said, if you break most things down, you do have a choice. I remember even having a conversation with a client, and she was talking about her children and the commitments to the children and stuff. And I was just explaining, but this is a choice. You've chosen to do this, and she said, like, well, I can't just abandon my children. And I said, is that true? Like, you could, like, you're choosing not to. I mean, yeah, let's not end this coaching session with the decision that you're going to abandon your children, but recognize that you are still making choices. And I think pretty much everything, if you break down, there's a choice. And what you were talking about there, obviously, that is a real power. If you actually, if you can really tune into that making a choice in how you respond, and just maybe just slowing things down a little bit, and recognizing, if you think about the kind of the road rage incident, I often say to my clients, it would be understandable if you reacted in a certain way. It would be justifiable if you responded in a certain way. But how's it going to make you feel? Is it going to serve you? If you can actually, bring that sort of awareness. I've had moments where, I've been on one side or the other, and it feels so much better when you make the right decision, when you respond in the right way, even, especially when I could have really, I could have lost it there, because it was pressing my buttons. But actually, look, I dealt with it this way, and I was compassionate, and I had a strong conversation, but it was a conversation, not a yelling match. I feel great when I do that. So yeah, kind of actually allowing yourself to operate in that way, rather than kind of jumping down the kind of the reaction route, because that feels like that's what you should be doing. Well, where's that taking you? I mean, it's probably going to take you to a better place if you go over here instead.
Or what you've always done, right?
Yeah.
What you should be doing, or what you've always done, because your mind's just taking shortcuts. And it's making me think of, you said at the start, one of the big things that you live deliberately is looking after yourself, right? Looking after your health. And as we said, you've been a PT, had that business for nearly 20 years. And like, this whole shifting from default to deliberate thinking is a training thing as well, right? Like, exactly like going to the gym. You have to have the awareness to go, well, you know what I could do with some bigger arms? I could do with some bigger arms. So then you go, what are the exercises that I do to do that? And then you go into the gym, and you don't expect to walk out with bigger arms after session one. But if you put the reps in 6 months, you will have that. So people have this expectation sometimes that you just flick the switch, but actually it's a muscle that you have to build. But one of the other things I was thinking of there is, sometimes it's really difficult to not act on your default reaction when you haven't been looking after yourself physically, right? So that, like, physical connection to your mind. So one of the things that I've probably reacted a little bit more because of lack of sleep over the last 6 months, right? With like a new baby, that's an inevitable consequence, right? Like, you're going to have less sleep. But I could also feel myself reacting in a certain way, being more stressed, being more overwhelmed, struggle to control my emotions a little bit more. And other times that I've recognized that with me or with clients is sleep, not doing exercise, hungover. Those are the sort of three main ones, right? Like, not necessarily looking after yourself. So I suppose it highlights your original point of, people don't necessarily link those two things, obviously, but actually they do have such a strong connection, your physical and mental fitness.
100%. I mean, yeah, in full agreement with everything you said there, except your arms. I think your arms look great, but yeah, I think
I've got a bit lean, Craig. I think
you're very lean.
Eat a bit more chicken.
No, you're looking good, looking very good. I think taking care of your health, and how that ties into your mental health. Like, for me, I mean, I make it very clear to my family and my friends, and anyone who knows me knows how much I prioritize my health. I mean, at the end of this year, I'll be 3 years without a drink. And that was just a conscious choice that I made because I wanted to be, again, I wanted to be a better husband. I wanted to be a better father. And, I wasn't a drinker at all. I mean, when I was younger, I used to drink and party a lot. But I wasn't drinking much at all when I decided to stop it entirely. But that was, it was a health thing, but it was downstream of that. It was because I want to be a better person. I want to be a better dad. And I saw that as something that I could change that would bring about that. And it's the same thing with those daily things. Like, again, like you mentioned, if I haven't eaten properly, if I haven't slept well, if I'm not hydrated, and if I don't get my training in, if I don't get my workout in. And what's interesting about that is the one, obviously, it's the feel good thing. It's, get the endorphins flowing 100%. Most of the time after a workout, you will feel better, and that will render you in a better mood and more able to make, better decisions. But also for me, it's kind of, I give a lot. I'm a dad, I'm a husband. I've got friends, I've got family. I've run 2 businesses. There's lots of things that I do and I give my energy to. And if I don't give some of that to myself and prioritize the things that I want to do and enjoy doing, then I start to feel resentful. I start to feel like the balance is off. And that puts me in a place where I find it harder to make those decisions. There's that kind of, when there's that underlying thing, sometimes like you're having this argument, but the argument is, it's not really that important. What's important is this thing that's nagging away at you. And that can be like that. If I haven't had my workout in the morning, that thing is nagging away at me. So I think, it's understanding yourself and understanding your needs and being aware of the things that put you in the best state. How do you show up as the best version of yourself every day? And whatever things help that, do those things.
Yeah. So why do you think a lot of guys and dads don't do that? Because everything you've just said, I totally agree with. Right? And when you say it out loud, it's so logical and obvious. It sounds ridiculous that people wouldn't do that, but why don't they prioritize? Why don't they choose themselves? Why don't they do the things that make them feel physically better so they're able to show up like the man and dad they want to be? Why do you think that is?
I suppose the first one, kind of a bit like what you've already mentioned already, is the kind of the default mode. Like if the default mode is that you're not doing that, then it's obviously it's the easiest thing is to carry on in the default mode. So that's the first thing, is that it's difficult in ways to kind of change things. I often talk about the power of making a decision, and I feel that's something that I've got in my locker. Like if I make a decision on something, I'm pretty hell bent on bringing it to fruition, unless I decide that it's not working, or if it's it's working but it's not serving me in other ways. So I talk to people a lot about that power of actually making a decision rather than just letting it be a thought. Like empower yourself with I'm doing this. So that's the first thing, is the change, the barrier to change, all the things that come with that. And part of that is the resistance, right? Living a more deliberate life is harder. I truly see the value that it's 100% worthwhile. I much prefer being that person. But I think when you are that person, you will probably still have those moments where you think, you'll see other people and you think, they don't seem to be trying as hard as me. Why am I trying so hard? Why do I care so much? But I think that's it. You have to care enough. So that's the first thing. If you don't care enough, then you're not going to do it, because there is resistance. It's much easier to just come home and sit and watch Netflix every night than it is to do a workout, or in the morning or the afternoon or whenever you're doing it. It's much easier to just keep flying off the handle at your kid or your partner than it is to spend some time, researching and checking in with yourself. And it's the easy route is the default route where a lot of people find themselves. But, unless you decide that, okay, this default route is easy, but it's not where I want to be, then, that's probably where you're going to find yourself.
Yeah, totally. And it is harder, right? Like it is in the short term. So like that's the way our mind works. It's so much harder to do it like that, but default decisions lead to a default life. Right? Like if you want to maximize your potential across all areas of your life, right? Like as a man, as a dad, as a husband, in your work, in your health, like anything that you really care about, then you have to start making some of those hard decisions, right? And a lot of it comes with choosing yourself first and actually creating some time and awareness and maybe get some help, right? To think about these things just so then you can make that decision exactly like you said. Take some action, like I talk about all the time, right? Like get some reps going to create that momentum in your mind to go, right, oh no, there actually is a different way in this. But you're so right with that part of the decision. I signed a couple of clients last week and one of them was quite resistant. And I was like, if you say yes, we won't even have a coaching conversation and you're going to feel good. You're going to feel good about yourself. You're going to feel better. We wouldn't have done anything. We would have had a couple of chats before, but we're not into the proper relationship. And I texted him a couple of days later and he was like, yeah, no, I do feel good. Because you're making a decision and taking responsibility and having agency in your own life rather than sitting there going, oh yeah, it's really difficult, it's hard, it fucking is, right? But you've got to start somewhere, and it starts with you having the courage, having the awareness, having the agency to go like, I want to do it in a slightly different way. And once you do that, once you start taking the action, then the momentum comes. And like I'm addicted to it now, right? Like I know that it helps me all the time. I know that taking the harder route in the short term will build me that long-term life. And you're totally right. Like sometimes I'm like, I'd rather just sit on my arse and not do anything, or I'd rather just go and get a job, or I'd rather go and do this, or I'd rather go and do that. Oh, life would be so much easier without kids.
Mm-hmm.
But would it be as enjoyable and as fulfilling, and would I feel as aligned as I do now? I genuinely don't think so.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned there, when you started talking about asking for help, and I think that's quite a big thing as well. With men, is actually that asking for help. I think it's definitely something. I'm not even sure how aware I was of it, but I definitely operated as somebody who didn't really ask for help much. I guess maybe saw it as weakness. There was also that kind of reluctance to burden people, not wanting to put myself in a situation where somebody might say no, and then I feel let down or abandoned or whatever for various reasons. But that's definitely something, one that I talk a lot about with my clients, but I think for myself, actually being more open to kind of, I see it as like creating a channel. If you ask somebody for help, you open up that channel. It's up to them whether they want to, open it up as well and continue it. But often, you actually, empower a relationship more when you actually ask for someone for help. A lot of people like helping people, right? So I think rather than seeing the burden that I might put on someone now, I see the opportunity to enhance a relationship. But yeah, again, the decision thing. I was thinking when you were talking about, how I feel when I'm sitting there moaning about things, which I do sometimes, and moaning about how hard things are, and certain things you feel like you can't catch a break, and you move forwards a few steps, and then something pulls you back. I mean, that's life, and sometimes it gets on top of you a little bit. I think about how I feel when that is what I'm saying, thinking, focusing on, basing my conversations around. And then I think about how I feel when I make a decision to change something. I plan, like I love, and I've started using AI now to kind of help me with that sort of stuff. And when you start planning stuff out and you create ideas and you make those intentions and those decisions even bigger by actually setting some plans that you want to execute. Oh, I feel great. I haven't done anything yet. There's been no change, but just the idea that I'm gonna change, I just feel like a completely different person.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you know, I'm big on the action part, and one of the things I always push my clients on now is, right, I'm going to do this. Okay, when are you going to do it?
Yeah.
You going to do it now, or are you going to put it in the diary, or when are you going to have that conversation, or when are you going to go for those runs, and when are you going to do this, and when are you going to do that? Like I had, you know, one of my clients who's just started, wanted to really get into running. And he was like, oh, yeah, I'll try and go a couple of times this week. I was like, right, okay, let's just relook at this. When are you going to go running? What do you need to do? What time? What conversations do you need to have? Do you need to chat with your wife about, you know, who's taking the kids to school? Do you need to say no to a meeting that might pop up? Okay, we're going on Wednesday morning this time and Sunday morning this time. Send me a photo of you running on Wednesday morning and Sunday morning, right? Because sometimes we just need that like kick to begin with, to get going, to get into momentum and that accountability and that, oh shit, I don't want to let someone else down, because it's much easier to let yourself down. Like that's like a habit that is ingrained in a lot of people, and it's in like the easy way out. But having that combination of, as you said, making the decision, which then translates into what specific action am I taking, and when am I taking it? Like having that trinity together is ultimately the key to creating the momentum to start moving forward. Fluffy goals need to be translated into very specific action. And it's interesting, like I probably, until very recently, I didn't necessarily underestimate it, but you know, in our work, sometimes people have this like mindset shift, and you can see it happening. They see things from a completely different perspective, right? And I probably underestimated the impact of someone lacing up their trainers and going for a run at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday morning because that's the thing that they said they were going to do. And actually, sometimes these little tactical tweaks to your life are the things that actually create that transformation, that identity. Because all we are the summation of the actions that we take ultimately, right? Like we can think about all these things, but if we don't actually do the thing, then we're not that thing, because we've no proof point to ourselves. We haven't created any kind of evidence in our lives. So if you want to be a fit person, decide to be a fit person, and what actions would a fit person actually take, and then fucking take the actions, right? And then that's how you become ultimately that person. Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but
No, it's a great point, and again, I mean, obviously with my background in fitness, I use kind of fitness analogies a lot as well. And the running is something I use a lot, and running is a real barrier for a lot of people, and a lot of people, it becomes kind of a almost like an identity thing, like, oh, I'm not a runner. I mean, the amount of times I've heard someone in my life say I'm not a runner, it's like, well, you're not, you weren't born not a runner. I mean, obviously you couldn't run when you were born, but you identify as someone who isn't a runner because you don't run. Like, it's the action that's driving the identity, right? Rather than the other way around. So all you have to do to break that identity is go for a run. Now, okay, there's a bit of a kind of a lag in maybe that kind of change in mindset. You might have to get somebody running once a week for a month before they start kind of going, oh, okay, I'm actually doing this now. Okay, I'm a runner. But if you grow that and that becomes twice a week, and then you speak to someone, you go, right, how's your running been over the last 6 months? Like, well, if they've been running, then they're a runner. That's it. And if you can shift that identity, that's really empowering, because all of a sudden you start to think, well, hang on a minute, then I can change other things as well. And actually my identity isn't stuck. When people say, "Oh, that's just who I am," is it who you are, or is it what you're doing? Is it who you're being, who you've been so far? And you can change things. People say, "Oh, yeah, I'm just not really adventurous." Well, maybe you haven't been adventurous. Why? What's the barriers to that? Would you like to be adventurous? Would it benefit you to be adventurous? Yeah, maybe actually I'd like to be more adventurous. Okay, right. Let's bring about some action that changes that narrative, and you realize, oh, actually, I am adventurous. In a way, we can all be anything in a way. It's just what we're telling ourselves based on maybe what we've done so far. And life throws things at us. It challenges it crushes us down, and it forces us to put ourselves in little boxes. But we have the power to break out of those boxes, like you said, with just action, a decision, and some action, and all of a sudden things are different. I also talk about trying, like people, if you think about losing weight, for example, a lot of people hover in this place where they're trying. Now, in a way, trying is fictional. Trying doesn't exist, right? You're either doing or you're not doing. Trying is kind of, thinking about it, or maybe doing some elements of it, but ultimately not to the volume that is necessary or with the frequency that's necessary. So you are losing weight or you're not losing weight. So ditch that "I'm trying" and just make a decision. Like, what are you? Are you good? What are you going to do for the next 6 months? Are you going to not lose weight, or are you going to lose weight? Decide on one of them and then do that. And when you're talking to people, say you're losing weight. Don't say "I'm trying to lose weight," because what "I'm trying to lose weight" is really saying is I'm failing. I'm not losing weight. And then that just carries on. Because that's what you're doing. Oh, I'm just somebody who's trying to lose weight. Oh, are you losing weight? No. I'm just trying. Oh, okay, cool. And then you allow yourself to keep trying. Whereas, if you are losing weight, and if you have someone like you, helping them stay accountable to that, then you can bring about that action, and then obviously, maybe it doesn't happen. You reflect what's going wrong, you monitor, but you don't just allow yourself to try.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to come back to your identity point, but just on that, like, trying story you were talking about there, I think there's a real difference between, like, judging yourself on the actions that you've taken versus the outcome, right? So, like, if you go, I want to lose weight is the outcome. So I've got this idea. It's called like an OSA action framework, but basically it's like O is what is the outcome that you want. S is what is the system and structure that I think will get me there. And then how does that translate into small tangible actions that you then put into your diary? And there's loads of, like, if the outcome is lose weight, right? Well, one, that's not specific enough. What are you actually going to do? So lose 3 kilograms in 3 months. Okay, cool. What are the 25 ways that you could do that? There's loads of ways you could do that. Pick one that you like, right? Or pick a couple that you like. Oh, right, well, I don't really like running. Oh, I like going to the gym and doing weights. Maybe do that. Oh, what do you with food stuff? Oh, yeah, no, I quite like that. Like morning fasting. Maybe do that and then count your calories the rest of the day. What are your systems? Okay, what are the actions that I have to take? Well, I need to go to the gym like 3 times a week, and I'll eat this amount. I'll eat these macros for this days, and I'll probably give myself a couple of cheat days, whatever. Right. So then translate it into real tangible actions. If you get to the end of the 3 months and you've done the actions and you don't get there, it was the system's fault, right? It wasn't your fault. Like, you've taken the action. There's loads of things that I've done, especially in business, right? When this is what I think as a hypothesis, this is the system that I think will translate into clients coming here, people signing up to my email list, people subscribing to the YouTube channel, and 90% of them are wrong, right? But it's not from me not taking action, right? So therefore, I can almost like objectively look at that I like this idea of acting like a scientist in your own life. What is the hypothesis? What is the experiment? The actions happen, and then you look at it after a time period and go, like, what happened? Why did that not work? Oh, right. Actually, maybe I was focused too heavy on carbs. Maybe we tweaked the protein. Maybe I actually needed to do that versus that. Okay, let's try that. But it's not about your effort, right? I think I really like this like binary expectation of you either do the thing or you don't do the thing. And trying is that ambiguity of like, oh yeah, well, I did do that Weight Watchers for a bit, or I sent a few DMs, but no one replied to the workshop that I was trying to run. So like, no, that's not exactly full commitment, right? Like that's not all in or all out. So I think one of the problems that a lot of people have is they don't define those standards and expectations for themselves. So therefore they're always losing. Right?
Yep.
Like they're always losing. They haven't got like specific enough. They haven't rated those actions. They haven't planned exactly what you said, like planned enough to go what is good and what is bad. And it sort of links back to your identity point as well. If you don't know who you want to be or who you are or what you give a shit about or what you want to be known as or what's going to make you feel good about yourself, are you going to feel good about yourself? Probably fucking not, right? Like you need to pause and reflect on that. And then, as you said, right, you take the actions to become that person. Like if you want to be fit and healthy and feel good about yourself, then what are the actions that person would take? If you want to show up as a good dad, what is your version? What would a good dad do? Do the thing. I want to be a good husband. Okay, yeah. Well, what is your version of a good husband? What's your hypothesis behind this? That's the system. Do the thing. Do you feel good about yourself or you have a good relationship? Yeah, great. It worked. If it doesn't, what's next? But it's that like not defining this fluffiness, this trying, this, oh yeah, it's just not working, is the thing that causes the pain. Whereas actually, if you get really specific and go, what am I doing? When am I doing it? And why am I doing it? And just keep taking the action, then at least even if you don't hit your outcomes, you know that you've taken the action that you said you're going to do to get there.
Definitely. I love that. I love how you've explained that, and the little model you've come up with there to kind of help people, look at their strategies and then, actually, like you said, it helps people. It takes people away from that kind of default mode of just then feeling guilty, because it didn't work out. And this is the problem, isn't it? If we don't, if we don't kind of have that awareness around what we're doing, and our strategies, etc., then what tends to happen is when things don't work out the way we would like them to, we feel bad. We feel obviously disappointed, but we also feel like we failed. We feel guilty. People say things, oh, that was so stupid, and it's like, well, we don't knowingly make bad decisions. Like, most of the things that you do because in the moment you think it's the right thing most of the time. Yet when it doesn't go right, you judge yourself as if you made the wrong decision on purpose. And then it ties into that kind of that gray area that, if you're talking about the kind of the binary, you're either doing it or you're not. But this area that you're floating in the middle, where so many people find themselves, there's no more frustrating place to be, really, because you are trying. You are putting some effort in. You are thinking about things, but it's not. It's maybe not all in, or you haven't really, like you said, you haven't kind of used the system to make sure that you've created the right thing to be doing, or what you might think is the right thing at that point. So you just, you feel like you're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, you're disappointed. Why am I not getting what I want here? I'm putting effort in, but you haven't really created that strategy properly. You haven't planned properly, and also it's like an ongoing thing, isn't it? So it's not like something you just win. You don't just win your health. You don't just win your success. Like you do something, and then it either takes you to a better place or a worse place, and then either way you reflect on it, you learn from it, and you grow, and then you try and make another decision to move to another place. Like, it's an ongoing thing. It's the same thing with your fitness. I always say to people, like, it's called keep fit, because you've got to keep doing it. You can't just do it and then, oh, I'm a fit person, great. You got to keep doing it. And again, I guess all of this ties back into, just being deliberate, and being deliberate is again, it's a constant act.
Yeah, totally. You have to just keep going. And there's always, like, I think with the fitness is a really good analogy for this. There's always levels. You can always be more deliberate. You can always upgrade yourself, right? And it's not about, being constantly on that treadmill, but it's about, living the most fulfilling life that you want to live. So as a final question, Craig, if someone is feeling that guilt, right? Someone is feeling in limbo, someone is feeling stuck, which a lot of dads do, right? Especially dads with young children that we both have conversations with, because the volume of stuff, stuff is a good word for it. The volume of stuff in your life is just insane. It's, the highest probably pressure point of your whole life is when you've got young children. You're usually in your 30s or 40s. Your mortgage is the most expensive. You've your least time. You've your highest responsibilities. It's tough to lift your head up. But if someone is feeling stuck, if someone is feeling guilty, like, what would be a good first step for them to do? What could they do today?
I mean, I think one of the most powerful things you can do is just, free up some time to actually do something about it, and whether that's reaching out to somebody else for help or just doing it on your own. Free up some time, sit down with a pen and paper, explore your feelings, explore what's going on. That guilt, what is that guilt? Because it can be different for different people. Is that guilt attached to something that is just very personal? Maybe your perception of where you should have got to or what you're doing. Is it tied to, aligning your achievements to other people and what you see on social media? Try and understand what that feeling of guilt is. Understand that you're not alone is a good thing, I think, in anything, because if there's one thing coaching has taught me, it's that we're all far more alike than we are different. We all struggle with the same things, and most of us are just trying to do our best. But yeah, just open yourself up to the idea of positive change. Make a decision that, what, this changes today. I'm going to do something about this, and I don't know what it is yet, and I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'm not going to carry on like this. I think that's the first most powerful thing you can do, is just make a decision and be open to changing the situation. And if you can't change the situation, be open to changing your narrative, your mindset around it.
Yeah, love that. So, like, reflect, take some time, create some space. I mean, people come to me all the time. I don't have any time. I'm like, look at your fucking Instagram use. You probably do have half an hour, right? To go up, get up early, do something late at night, whatever. You do have the space. But, like, as you said, reflect, make a decision. And probably the theme of today is deliberate action, ultimately, right? Like, do something. Just take that first step to create that momentum. And then usually the clarity comes from action. It doesn't come from thinking, right? It's making that decision and acting, and then you become clearer. But yeah, no, that's amazing, mate. Thank you so much.
I think just one final point, Steve, on that. Two really important things for me is self-compassion and honesty, and they kind of tie into one another. Having that self-compassion, seeing yourself as, a good person who is trying their best and going easy on yourself, but at the same time, being honest about how you feel, being honest about, what's really going on for you. Because if you don't kind of have those two things in your locker, it's quite hard to bring about positive change. If you don't have the kind of the self-compassion, then the energy is probably going to be wrong. You're going to be beating yourself up to try and change rather than loving yourself towards change. And if you're not kind of open and honest with yourself and, B, the people around you, or, if you hired a coach or whatever, making sure that you can be open with how you're feeling with them. If you don't give yourself that kind of clear, honest understanding of what the current situation is, how you feel about it, what's going on, then it's very hard to move forward. So yeah, I just wanted to throw those two things in because I think those two things are quite important factors for me.
Yeah, I love that. I don't mind my arms, by the way. I do have self-love for that.
Good.
So as a final one, I've loved this conversation. I'm sure everyone who listened with it will love it as well and want to follow you. So where can we find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, just Craig Carey. My main hangouts on social media wise is Instagram. So I am Craig Carey. And yeah, my website is just craigcarey.com. But yeah, the Instagram is probably the best place to find me.
Yeah, nice. Okay. I love that, Matt. Thank you so much again. Very much appreciated. And I'm sure we'll do this again soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much again for having me on. Yeah, it's been a blast.
Amazing. Thanks, Craig.